The scent of old paper and freshly brewed coffee hung in the air, a comforting aroma that had become the soundtrack to Ms. Eleanor Evans' life. Sunlight streamed through the tall, arched windows of the Oakwood Public Library, illuminating dust motes dancing in the golden beams. Eleanor, with her warm smile and neatly braided hair, moved with practiced grace amongst the towering shelves, a silent guardian of stories. She knew this library intimately, every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of turning pages, every secret tucked away within the spines of countless books. Today was a typical Tuesday. A steady stream of patrons flowed through the double doors, each with their own unique quest for knowledge or escape. A young boy, no older than 7, clutched a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, his eyes wide with anticipation as Eleanor helped him find a comfortable spot by the large window. She watched him for a moment, a soft smile playing on her lips as he lost himself in the tale of a spider and a pig. An elderly woman, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, approached the circulation desk, her request a bit more demanding. She needed assistance navigating the Dewey Decimal System, a task that Eleanor handled with patience and a gentle touch. She explained the system clearly, her voice calm and reassuring, and the woman left with a stack of books on her favorite subject, Victorian-era gardening. Eleanor loved these moments, these small interactions that built a sense of community within the library's walls. She wasn't just a librarian. She was a connector, a guide, a silent witness to countless stories unfolding within the pages of her collection. She'd spent years curating this collection, meticulously organizing and categorizing each book, ensuring that every reader could find something that resonated with their soul. A teenager, headphones dangling around his neck, nervously approached the desk. He mumbled a request for a book on astrophysics, his cheeks flushed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Eleanor, recognizing the shy demeanor, offered a few suggestions, tailoring her recommendations to his apparent level of understanding. She even shared a personal anecdote about her own fascination with the cosmos, a shared passion that instantly broke the ice. He left with a hopeful smile, clutching his chosen book like a precious treasure. Later, she helped a college student find research material for a term paper, patiently guiding him through the library's online databases. She even offered him a few tips on effective research strategies, drawing from her own experience as a former academic. The student, initially hesitant and overwhelmed, left feeling empowered and confident in his ability to complete his assignment. Throughout the day, Eleanor effortlessly juggled her various tasks, answering reference questions, shelving returned books, and assisting patrons with their diverse needs. She possessed a remarkable ability to anticipate their needs, offering assistance before they even had to ask. Her knowledge of literature, history, and science was encyclopedic, a testament to her years of dedication and her unwavering love for books. She treated each patron with respect and genuine warmth, creating a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere for everyone who walked through the library doors. As the afternoon wore on, the library began to quiet down. The last of the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished wooden floors, creating a serene and peaceful atmosphere. Eleanor took a moment to sit at her desk, the gentle hum of the library's air conditioning a soothing counterpoint to the quiet rustle of pages being turned. She sipped her lukewarm coffee, a contented sigh escaping her lips. This was her sanctuary, her happy place. This was where she belonged. She was a keeper of stories, a nurturer of minds, and a silent champion of knowledge. And as the day drew to a close, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had made a positive impact on the lives of her patrons, one book at a time. The quiet hum of the library was a testament to the power of stories, and Eleanor, their silent guardian, was ready for whatever the next day might bring. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the library floor as Mr. Arthur Abernathy entered, his crisp, white shirt and tailored trousers a stark contrast to the worn comfort of the space. He carried himself with an air of self-importance, his chin held high, his gaze sweeping across the room with a critical eye. He stopped at the circulation desk, where Eleanor Evans was meticulously stamping a book, her brow furrowed in concentration. He cleared his throat loudly, a sound that cut through the quiet hum of the library like a discordant note. Eleanor looked up, her expression instantly softening into a welcoming smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you find something?" Mr. Abernathy didn't respond immediately. He surveyed Eleanor with a look that was both appraising and dismissive, his gaze lingering on her dark skin before finally settling on her name tag. "Ms. Evans," he said, his voice carrying a hint of condescension. "I require some assistance with selecting a novel. Something substantial." Eleanor, accustomed to a variety of requests, nodded politely. "Certainly, sir. What kind of novel are you interested in? Perhaps you could tell me about your favorite authors or genres?" Mr. Abernathy scoffed, a sound that betrayed his impatience. "Oh, I'm quite familiar with literature. I've read the classics, of course. Austen, Dickens, Bronte, the usual suspects. But I'm looking for something new, something challenging." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Something I wouldn't expect you to recommend." The subtle implication hung heavy in the air, a sting that Eleanor felt despite her years of experience navigating the sometimes unpleasant aspects of her profession. She remained professional, her smile unwavering. "I understand, sir. Perhaps you could tell me more about what you're looking for in a challenging novel. What kind of themes or subjects interest you?" Mr. Abernathy leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'm looking for something intellectually stimulating, something that requires a certain level of understanding, something that wouldn't be readily apparent to someone unfamiliar with the finer points of literature." His gaze lingered on Eleanor again, the unspoken accusation clear. Eleanor's smile tightened slightly, but she maintained her composure. "Sir, I assure you, my knowledge of literature is extensive. I've been a librarian for over 15 years, and I've assisted countless patrons with their reading selections. I'm confident I can help you find something that meets your criteria." "Oh, I'm sure you can," Mr. Abernathy retorted, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But I'm just not sure I trust your judgment. You see, I'm looking for something, well, something written by someone who actually understands the nuances of the English language. Someone who isn't, well, you know." He trailed off, leaving the offensive implication hanging in the air. Eleanor's patience was wearing thin, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Sir, I find your assumptions offensive and completely unwarranted. My background has nothing to do with my ability to assist you in finding a book. I am a highly qualified librarian with a deep understanding of literature. Now, if you'd like to tell me more about your preferences, I'll be happy to help. If not, I suggest you try another library." Mr. Abernathy, taken aback by her unexpected firmness, sputtered for a moment before regaining his composure. He sniffed disdainfully. "Very well," he said, his voice tight with barely concealed anger. "Let's see if you can actually surprise me." He then proceeded to list a series of obscure authors and complex literary theories, hoping to stump her. Eleanor, however, met his challenge with a calm and knowledgeable response, suggesting titles and authors that perfectly matched his exacting demands, leaving him speechless with a mixture of surprise and grudging respect. He finally selected a book, his demeanor still stiff, and left the library without another word. Eleanor watched him go, a quiet sense of frustration simmering beneath her professional facade. The incident left a lingering unpleasantness in the air, a stark contrast to the usual peaceful atmosphere of the library. Mr. Abernathy, clutching his chosen book, paused at the circulation desk, a smug expression on his face. He'd expected Eleanor to flounder, to be unable to keep up with his pretentious demands. Instead, she'd effortlessly met his challenge, suggesting titles and authors that perfectly matched his exacting criteria. This unexpected competence only fueled his underlying prejudice. "Well, Ms. Evans," he began, his voice laced with a condescending tone that was far more blatant than before, "I must admit I'm surprised. I didn't expect such proficiency from someone in your position." He emphasized the last words, his meaning dripping with thinly veiled racism. Eleanor's smile faltered, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features. She'd dealt with subtle biases before, but this was blatant, an open display of prejudice that tested her patience. She remained outwardly calm, however, her years of experience teaching her the importance of maintaining control in the face of adversity. "Sir," she replied, her voice steady despite the simmering anger within. "I'm not sure what you mean by position. I'm a librarian, and I pride myself on my knowledge of literature. My qualifications are irrelevant to my ability to assist you." Mr. Abernathy chuckled, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "Oh, I'm sure they are, but it's unexpected. It's just unusual to find someone of your background with such a refined taste in literature." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur. "One might almost think you're an exception to the rule." The implication was clear. A thinly veiled insult that suggested Eleanor's success was an anomaly, a fluke rather than a testament to her hard work and dedication. Eleanor felt a surge of anger, but she fought it down, reminding herself that escalating the situation would only serve to validate Mr. Abernathy's prejudiced views. "Sir," she said, her voice firm but controlled, "I find your comments increasingly inappropriate. My background is irrelevant to my professional capabilities. I am a highly qualified librarian, and I have dedicated my life to serving the community by providing access to knowledge and literature. Your assumptions are not only offensive, but also a gross misjudgment of my abilities." Mr. Abernathy, clearly enjoying her discomfort, leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips. "Oh, I apologize if I've offended you, Ms. Evans. I simply find it fascinating. It's so unexpected. I mean, one wouldn't expect someone like you to be so well-read." He paused, letting the insult hang in the air. "I suppose it just goes to show that even in the most unexpected places, one can find surprises." He emphasized the word surprises, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Eleanor felt a knot of frustration tightening in her stomach. She wanted to lash out, to tell him exactly what she thought of his condescending remarks, but she knew that doing so would only give him the satisfaction he craved. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to remain calm and professional. "Sir," she said, her voice measured and controlled, "I will not engage in this conversation any further. If you have no further questions, I suggest you leave." Her tone was firm, leaving no room for further argument. Mr. Abernathy, momentarily stunned by her unexpected firmness, finally backed down, muttering something about the peculiarities of modern society, before turning and stalking away, leaving Eleanor to grapple with the lingering sting of his prejudice and the frustration of her inability to directly confront his offensive behavior. The quiet hum of the library felt strangely discordant, a stark contrast to the simmering anger that burned within her. After Mr. Abernathy's departure, a heavy silence descended upon the library, broken only by the occasional rustle of pages and the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Eleanor remained at her desk, outwardly calm, but inwardly a storm raged. The sting of Mr. Abernathy's words lingered, a bitter taste in her mouth. His casual racism, his blatant disregard for her intelligence and accomplishments, had left her feeling deeply wounded. She forced herself to focus on her work, processing returned books and answering the occasional query from other patrons. But her mind kept returning to Mr. Abernathy's words, replaying them like a broken record. The subtle digs, the condescending tone, the thinly veiled insults, they all chipped away at her composure, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. A young girl approached the desk, her eyes wide with excitement as she presented Eleanor with a well-loved copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Eleanor smiled, offering the girl a warm greeting and a cheerful stamp on her library card. But even this simple interaction felt tainted by the lingering residue of Mr. Abernathy's prejudice. The girl's innocent enthusiasm felt like a stark contrast to the ugliness she'd just encountered. Eleanor found herself staring out the window, watching the late afternoon sun dip below the horizon. The vibrant colors of the sunset seemed to mock her inner turmoil, a painful reminder of the beauty that existed in the world, a beauty that was often overshadowed by the darkness of prejudice. She felt a deep sense of disappointment, not just in Mr. Abernathy, but in herself. She had allowed his words to affect her, to undermine her confidence and sense of self-worth. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to her profession. She was a librarian, a keeper of stories, a champion of knowledge. She would not let the ignorance of one man diminish her passion or her dedication. As the library began to close, Eleanor methodically organized her workspace, tidying up the desk and straightening the books on the shelves. Each action was deliberate, a small act of defiance against the lingering negativity. She reminded herself that Mr. Abernathy's words were not a reflection of her worth, but rather a reflection of his own limitations and prejudices. She thought about her own journey, the challenges she'd overcome to achieve her success. She recalled the sacrifices she'd made, the obstacles she'd faced, and the unwavering support of her family and friends. These memories fueled her resolve, reminding her of her strength and her ability to rise above adversity. As she locked the library doors behind her, a sense of quiet determination filled her. She wouldn't let Mr. Abernathy's words define her. She would continue to serve her community, to champion knowledge, and to be a beacon of light in a world that often seemed shrouded in darkness. She would let her actions speak louder than his words, proving him wrong with every book she shelved, every question she answered, and every patron she helped. The incident left a lingering bitterness, but it also fueled a quiet fire within her, a determination to rise above the prejudice and continue her work with renewed vigor. The sunset, once a painful reminder of her inner turmoil, now seemed to symbolize the hope and resilience that burned within her. Mr. Abernathy, having finally selected a book, a weighty tome on 18th-century British political philosophy, approached the circulation desk one last time. He placed the book down with a decisive thud, the sound echoing slightly in the now quieter library. Eleanor, still grappling with the lingering effects of his earlier comments, processed the transaction with a practiced efficiency that masked her inner turmoil. She stamped the due date, her movements precise and controlled, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. He didn't meet her gaze directly, his eyes fixed on the book as if it held some profound secret that only he could understand. There was a smug satisfaction in his posture, a self-assuredness that bordered on arrogance. He seemed to revel in the power he'd exerted, the subtle yet undeniable discomfort he'd inflicted. He'd sought to belittle her, to diminish her expertise, and in his own mind he had succeeded. Or so he believed. As he reached for his wallet, a faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. It was the smile of someone who felt superior, someone who believed they had won some unspoken battle, the smile of someone who felt validated in their prejudices. He paid for the book without a word, his movements stiff and precise, like a man performing a ritual. He paused for a moment, his hand hovering over the book as if contemplating a final, cutting remark. But then he seemed to change his mind. Perhaps he felt he'd already made his point, that his subtle jabs had effectively communicated his disdain. Or perhaps a flicker of doubt, however small, had crossed his mind. Whatever the reason, he refrained from any further comments. He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing slightly on the polished wooden floor. He moved with a deliberate gait, his head held high, his shoulders squared. He carried himself like a man who believed he was above the mundane, above the everyday concerns of ordinary people. He was a man who believed he was entitled to his prejudices, entitled to his condescending remarks, entitled to his sense of superiority. Eleanor watched him go, her expression unreadable. She felt no satisfaction in his departure, no sense of relief. Instead, a heavy sense of disappointment settled upon her, a weariness that stemmed from years of enduring similar encounters. She'd faced subtle biases before, but this was different. This was blatant, unapologetic prejudice, delivered with a chilling sense of entitlement. She processed the transaction, her movements mechanical, her mind still reeling from the encounter. She felt a deep sense of frustration, not just at Mr. Abernathy's behavior, but at the systemic nature of the prejudice he represented. It was a prejudice that was woven into the fabric of society, a prejudice that she encountered far too often in her daily life. As the library doors closed behind Mr. Abernathy, a heavy silence descended upon the space. It was a silence that was heavy with the weight of unspoken words, of unacknowledged prejudices, of the lingering sting of injustice. Eleanor remained at her desk, her heart heavy with a sense of disappointment and weariness. The encounter had left its mark, a reminder of the battles still to be fought, the prejudices still to be overcome. But even in the face of such negativity, a quiet determination burned within her, a resolve to continue her work, to champion knowledge, and to be a beacon of light in a world that often seemed shrouded in darkness. The silence, however heavy, would not break her spirit. It would only fuel her resolve. The lingering unpleasantness of Mr. Abernathy's visit faded as Eleanor immersed herself in the preparations for the upcoming author event. The library buzzed with a different kind of energy, a vibrant excitement that contrasted sharply with the quiet frustration of the previous afternoon. This event was special. It was the culmination of years of hard work, a testament to her dedication and passion. Eleanor, the author behind the best-selling novel Echoes of the Past, had kept her identity a secret from most of her colleagues and patrons. She'd chosen to remain anonymous, preferring to let her work speak for itself. But tonight, the secret would be revealed. A nervous thrill mixed with immense pride pulsed within her. The library staff worked tirelessly, transforming the main hall into a welcoming space for the event. Tables were arranged, chairs set up, and posters advertising the event adorned the walls. Eleanor oversaw the preparations, offering guidance and encouragement, her earlier frustration replaced by a focused energy. She checked the book display, ensuring that copies of Echoes of the Past were prominently featured, their vibrant covers a testament to the novel's success. She spent hours reviewing the schedule, ensuring that every detail was in place. She meticulously crafted a short speech, expressing her gratitude to her readers and sharing her inspiration for the novel. She practiced it repeatedly, her voice gaining confidence with each iteration. The words flowed easily, a reflection of her passion and her connection to the story she'd created. As the evening approached, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The library staff, usually calm and collected, were visibly excited. They'd all read Echoes of the Past, secretly wondering about the author's identity. Now, the mystery was about to be unveiled. The thought filled Eleanor with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She carefully selected her outfit, choosing something elegant yet comfortable, reflecting her personality and her connection to the book. She wanted to present herself authentically, without pretense or artifice. She wanted her readers to see the person behind the words, the woman who had poured her heart and soul into the creation of Echoes of the Past. As the first guests began to arrive, Eleanor took a deep breath, reminding herself of her accomplishments. The success of her novel was a testament to her talent, her hard work, and her unwavering belief in her abilities. It was a validation of her dreams, a reward for her dedication. The novel's popularity was a testament to the power of storytelling, to the ability of words to connect people across time and space. She felt a surge of gratitude for her readers, for the people who had embraced her story, who had connected with her characters, and who had found solace, inspiration, or simply enjoyment in her work. Their support had fueled her creativity. Their enthusiasm had given her the confidence to pursue her dreams. Tonight, she would share her gratitude, and she would finally reveal the person behind the words. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and immense pride. The library was ready, and so was she. The stage was set, the spotlight awaited, and Eleanor Evans, the author of Echoes of the Past, was prepared to take her bow. The library hummed with a vibrant energy. The main hall, usually a quiet sanctuary of books and hushed whispers, was transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Rows of chairs were filled with eager attendees, their faces a mixture of anticipation and excitement. The air buzzed with the low murmur of conversations, the rustle of turning pages, and the clinking of coffee cups. This wasn't the usual quiet Tuesday evening at the Oakwood Public Library. Tonight was special. Tonight, the mystery behind the best-selling novel Echoes of the Past would be revealed. Eleanor, backstage, felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. She'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, but the reality of the situation was finally setting in. She glanced at her reflection in a small hand mirror, adjusting her hair and smoothing down her dress. She looked calm and composed, but inside a whirlwind of emotion swirled. The library staff bustled around, making final preparations. They checked the microphone, adjusted the lighting, and ensured that everything was in place. Their enthusiasm was infectious, their excitement a testament to the success of the event and the popularity of Echoes of the Past. They'd all read the book, secretly wondering about the author's identity, and now, the mystery was about to be solved. A hush fell over the crowd as the librarian, Ms. Johnson, stepped onto the small stage. She welcomed the attendees, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. She spoke about the success of Echoes of the Past, highlighting its critical acclaim and its impact on readers. She praised the author's talent, her storytelling ability, and her unique voice. Her words built the anticipation, creating a palpable sense of excitement in the room. Ms. Johnson then introduced the author, her voice filled with a dramatic flourish. Eleanor took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, a wave of warmth washing over her as she was met with a thunderous applause. The lights shone brightly, illuminating her face, and she felt a surge of both excitement and nervousness. She smiled, her heart pounding in her chest, and began her short speech. She spoke about her inspiration for the novel, her passion for history, and her love for storytelling. She shared personal anecdotes, revealing glimpses of her life and her experiences. Her voice was clear and confident, her words flowing effortlessly, reflecting her passion and her connection to the story she created. The audience listened intently, captivated by her words and her genuine enthusiasm. They were eager to connect with the author, to learn more about the person behind the words that had touched their lives. Eleanor felt a deep sense of connection with her readers, a shared experience that transcended the physical boundaries of the library. After her speech, Eleanor answered questions from the audience, engaging in lively discussions about her writing process, her characters, and her inspirations. The questions were insightful and thoughtful, reflecting the audience's deep engagement with the novel. Eleanor answered each question with care and consideration, sharing her insights and her passion for her craft. The event was a resounding success, a testament to the power of storytelling and the enduring appeal of Echoes of the Past. The library buzzed with energy, the air filled with the excitement of discovery and the joy of shared experience. As the event drew to a close, Eleanor felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a profound satisfaction that came from sharing her work with her readers and connecting with them on a personal level. The evening was a celebration of storytelling, a testament to the power of words, and a reminder of the transformative power of literature. And as the attendees began to disperse, Eleanor knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter filled with possibilities and opportunities. The author event was in full swing. The library hall thrummed with the excited chatter of book lovers, the air thick with the scent of coffee and anticipation. Eleanor, basking in the warmth of her readers' appreciation, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The success of the event and the overwhelmingly positive response to her novel, Echoes of the Past, had far exceeded her expectations. She was genuinely touched by the genuine enthusiasm and insightful questions from her audience. She felt a deep connection to these people, united by the shared experience of her storytelling. As the Q&A session neared its end, a familiar figure entered the hall. Mr. Arthur Abernathy, the same patron who had subjected Eleanor to his condescending remarks just days before, stood near the back, his usual air of self-importance slightly muted by the festive atmosphere. He seemed oblivious to the identity of the author, his attention focused on the lively discussion unfolding on stage. He hadn't recognized Eleanor behind the author's persona. His earlier encounter with her at the circulation desk had been brief, and the setting had been vastly different. Here, bathed in the warm glow of the stage lights, Eleanor exuded a confidence and charisma that were absent during their previous interaction. The casual, almost dismissive way he had addressed her earlier was utterly absent from his demeanor now. He was captivated by the author's eloquent responses, the passion in her voice, and the clear knowledge she displayed. He watched, seemingly engrossed, as Eleanor gracefully fielded questions about historical accuracy, character development, and the inspiration behind the novel. He listened intently to her insightful answers, his earlier condescending attitude nowhere in sight. He found himself genuinely impressed by her articulate responses, her deep understanding of the subject matter, and her ability to connect with the audience on a personal level. He hadn't expected this. He'd envisioned a less polished, less articulate author, someone who perhaps relied on luck or coincidence rather than genuine talent and hard work. His preconceived notions, based solely on Eleanor's race and her profession, had been utterly shattered. The author's intelligence, eloquence, and passion were undeniable. He found himself captivated, his earlier prejudices slowly dissolving under the weight of her undeniable talent. He observed the genuine admiration in the eyes of the audience, their rapt attention a testament to the author's skill. He listened to their enthusiastic comments, their appreciation for the novel's depth and complexity. He saw the genuine connection between the author and her readers, a bond forged through the power of storytelling. Unbeknownst to him, the author he so admired was the same woman he had so casually dismissed just a few days earlier. The irony was profound, a stark contrast to his earlier assumptions. He was witnessing the dismantling of his own prejudices, a gradual erosion of his preconceived notions. The event, which he had initially attended out of a casual interest in literature, was transforming into something far more significant, a personal reckoning. He was about to confront the limitations of his own judgment, the consequences of his casual racism, and the humbling power of unexpected encounters. The unveiling of the author's identity was imminent, and with it, a profound shift in Mr. Abernathy's perspective. The Q&A session concluded, and Ms. Johnson stepped back onto the stage. She thanked the audience for their participation and announced that the author would be available for book signings. A wave of people surged forward, eager to meet the woman whose words had captivated them. Mr. Abernathy, still standing near the back, watched the scene unfold, a mixture of admiration and confusion swirling within him. He was genuinely impressed by the author's talent, her eloquence, and her ability to connect with her audience. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd encountered this woman before, but he couldn't quite place where. As the line began to form, Mr. Abernathy noticed something familiar about the author's appearance. The way she held herself, the subtle tilt of her head, the gentle curve of her smile, all seemed vaguely familiar. A wave of recognition washed over him, a sudden jolt of understanding that sent a chill down his spine. He squinted, trying to get a better look, his heart pounding in his chest. The author stepped down from the stage, her face illuminated by the warm glow of the library lights. As she began to sign books, Mr. Abernathy inched closer, his eyes fixed on her face. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. It was Eleanor Evans, the librarian he had so condescendingly dismissed just days before. The woman he had belittled, the woman whose expertise he had questioned, the woman whose intelligence he had subtly dismissed based on nothing but his own prejudiced assumptions. His jaw dropped in disbelief. The blood drained from his face, leaving him pale and speechless. He stood there, frozen in place, his eyes wide with shock and astonishment. The smug satisfaction he'd felt earlier was replaced by a wave of profound embarrassment and shame. He felt a knot of guilt tightening in his stomach, a painful reminder of his own arrogance and his own deeply ingrained prejudices. The author's calm demeanor, her professional composure, her unwavering politeness, all seemed to mock his earlier behavior. He'd been so quick to judge, so ready to dismiss her based on superficial assumptions. He'd underestimated her, misjudged her, and insulted her without a second thought. And now, here she was, celebrated for her talent, her intelligence, and her ability to connect with her readers. He watched as she interacted with her fans, her smile genuine and warm, her mannerisms gracious and welcoming. He saw the respect she commanded, the admiration she inspired. He saw the profound impact she had on her readers, the way she touched their lives through her storytelling. And he realized the depth of his own error, the magnitude of his own prejudice. He felt a wave of nausea wash over him, a physical manifestation of his inner turmoil. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the background, to escape the weight of his own guilt and shame. He'd allowed his prejudices to cloud his judgment, to blind him to the truth. He'd made a snap judgment based on superficial assumptions, and now he was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. The realization hit him with the full force of its impact, leaving him speechless, ashamed, and profoundly humbled. The woman he had so casually dismissed was a celebrated author, a woman of immense talent and intelligence, a woman whose work had touched countless lives. And he, in his arrogance, had failed to see it. Mr. Abernathy remained rooted to the spot, his earlier self-assuredness replaced by a profound sense of unease. The revelation that the acclaimed author was the same librarian he had so condescendingly dismissed hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of his own flawed judgment. He was trapped in a silent, internal battle, his mind a chaotic whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Shame gnawed at him, a bitter taste in his mouth. He replayed his interaction with Eleanor in his mind, each condescending remark a fresh stab of guilt. His words, once delivered with a casual arrogance, now echoed in his ears, each syllable a testament to his own ignorance and prejudice. He judged a book by its cover, or rather, a person by their profession and appearance, and the consequences of that judgment were now painfully clear. The weight of his assumptions pressed down on him, suffocating him with the realization of his own flawed perspective. He'd allowed his preconceived notions to cloud his judgment, to blind him to the truth. He'd made a snap judgment based on superficial observations, and now he was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He wrestled with the dissonance between his initial perception of Eleanor and the reality of her accomplishments. He'd pictured a less educated, less insightful individual, someone whose opinions on literature he could easily dismiss. But the truth was far more complex, far more humbling. Eleanor Evans was not only a skilled librarian, but also a celebrated author, a woman of immense talent and intelligence. His initial assessment had been not only wrong, but also deeply offensive. The embarrassment was almost unbearable. He imagined Eleanor's reaction if she knew of his earlier behavior, the disappointment in her eyes, the quiet frustration she must have felt. The thought filled him with a profound sense of regret. He'd not only insulted her intelligence, but also undermined her professionalism and her dedication to her work. He longed to apologize, to somehow undo the damage he'd caused. But the thought of approaching her, of facing her judgment, filled him with a mixture of fear and shame. He was trapped in a cycle of self-recrimination, his mind a battleground of conflicting emotions. He wanted to escape, to disappear, to erase his earlier behavior from existence. But he knew that he couldn't. He had to confront his actions, to acknowledge his mistakes, and to take responsibility for his behavior. He was no longer the self-assured, condescending man he had been earlier. He was humbled, exposed, and deeply ashamed. The festive atmosphere of the library seemed to mock him, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within him. The celebratory buzz of the author event was a painful reminder of his own failings, a constant reminder of the injustice he had inflicted. He was caught in a vortex of self-doubt, grappling with the implications of his prejudiced assumptions and the embarrassing reality of his own behavior. The weight of his guilt was almost unbearable, a heavy burden he would have to carry long after the event had ended. The internal confrontation was far from over. It was just beginning. The internal conflict raged within Mr. Abernathy, a tempest of shame and regret. He watched Eleanor interact with her readers, her smile genuine and warm, her mannerisms gracious and welcoming. The contrast between her kindness and his earlier behavior was stark, a painful reminder of his own failings. He knew he had to apologize, to somehow make amends for his offensive behavior, but the prospect filled him with a mixture of fear and trepidation. He considered leaving, escaping the weight of his guilt, but the thought felt unbearable. He couldn't simply walk away, ignoring the harm he'd caused. He needed to confront his actions, to acknowledge his mistakes, and to take responsibility for his behavior. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the encounter. He approached Eleanor, his steps hesitant and uncertain. He felt a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach, a mixture of fear and anticipation. He wasn't sure how she would react, whether she would even accept his apology. But he knew he had to try. He reached her as she was signing a book for a young girl, her smile radiant and genuine. He cleared his throat, a nervous sound that cut through the gentle hum of conversation. Eleanor looked up, her expression neutral, her eyes questioning. "Ms. Evans," he began, his voice barely a whisper, the words catching in his throat. He felt a blush rising in his cheeks, a physical manifestation of his embarrassment. I need to apologize." Eleanor's expression remained neutral, her eyes still questioning. She didn't interrupt, giving him the space to express himself. He continued, his voice gaining a little strength. I behaved despicably the other day. My comments were offensive, unwarranted, and completely unjustified. I allowed my prejudices to cloud my judgment, and I deeply regret my behavior. I underestimated you, misjudged you, and insulted you without a second thought. I owe you a sincere apology." He paused, his eyes fixed on hers, searching for some sign of forgiveness. He saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a hint of understanding. She didn't interrupt, but her gaze was unwavering, her expression conveying a quiet strength. He continued, his voice gaining more confidence. "I was wrong, completely and utterly wrong. I allowed my preconceived notions to dictate my perception of you, and I am deeply ashamed of my actions. Your talent, your intelligence, your dedication, they are all undeniable. I was blind to them, blinded by my own ignorance and prejudice." He paused again, his voice trembling slightly. "I know an apology can't undo the harm I've caused, but I sincerely hope you can accept it. I've learned a valuable lesson, and I hope that you can forgive me." Eleanor listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she remained silent for a moment, her eyes searching his. Then, she spoke, her voice calm and measured. "I accept your apology, Mr. Abernathy. I hope you've learned from this experience. It's important to challenge our assumptions and to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background or profession." Mr. Abernathy felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had expected anger, perhaps even rejection, but Eleanor's response was surprisingly understanding. He nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. He knew he had a long way to go, but he was committed to challenging his own prejudices and striving to be a better person. The quiet apology was just the first step in a long journey of self-reflection and growth. The quiet exchange between Eleanor and Mr. Abernathy marked a turning point. The air, once heavy with tension and unspoken resentments, now felt lighter, cleansed by the sincerity of his apology and the grace of her acceptance. The incident, though initially painful and frustrating for Eleanor, had ultimately served as a catalyst for reflection, not only for Mr. Abernathy, but also for herself. She had faced prejudice before, subtle biases and condescending remarks that chipped away at her confidence and challenged her sense of self-worth. But this encounter, though deeply unpleasant, had also been strangely empowering. It had forced her to confront her own internalized biases, to examine the ways in which she might have unconsciously perpetuated harmful stereotypes. The success of her novel, Echoes of the Past, was not just a personal triumph, but also a validation of her resilience and her unwavering dedication to her craft. It was a testament to her ability to overcome adversity, to rise above the limitations imposed by prejudice, and to achieve her goals despite the obstacles she had faced. The journey had been challenging, but the destination was all the more rewarding. Mr. Abernathy, on the other hand, was left with a profound sense of self-awareness. His encounter with Eleanor had been a brutal lesson in humility, a stark reminder of the limitations of his own perceptions. He'd allowed his preconceived notions to cloud his judgment, to blind him to the truth. He'd underestimated her, misjudged her, and insulted her based on nothing but his own prejudices. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, a heavy burden of guilt and regret. He knew that a simple apology couldn't erase the harm he'd caused, but it was a necessary first step in a long journey of self-reflection and growth. He was committed to challenging his own biases, to actively combating his own prejudices, and to treating everyone with respect and understanding, regardless of their background or profession. The event concluded, and the library returned to its usual quiet hum. Eleanor, surrounded by the comforting scent of old paper and freshly brewed coffee, felt a deep sense of peace. The incident with Mr. Abernathy had been a painful reminder of the insidious nature of prejudice, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. She had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more committed than ever to her work. Mr. Abernathy, leaving the library, carried a heavy weight of guilt and self-reflection. He knew that his encounter with Eleanor would forever change his perspective, shaping his future interactions and influencing his understanding of the world. He had learned a valuable lesson, a lesson that would stay with him long after the memory of the event had faded. The story of their encounter serves as a reminder of the importance of challenging our preconceived notions, of confronting our own biases, and of treating everyone with respect and understanding. It's a testament to the power of empathy, the resilience of the human spirit, and the transformative potential of unexpected encounters. It's a story about prejudice, assumptions, and the quiet triumph of a woman who refused to be defined by the limitations imposed by others. It's a story about a man who learned a valuable lesson in humility, a lesson that would shape his future interactions and influence his understanding of the world. And it's a story about the enduring power of stories to connect people, to challenge assumptions, and to inspire change.